You're listening to Artistic Finance, show 189. On today's show, we chat with theatrical lighting designer Jason Lynch about freelancing in Chicago. We discuss LLCs, estate sales, keeping our humanity, investing in the S&P 500, some of Jason's recent design fees, and moving to a big theater city that's not New York. Also, see if you pick up on this. I think Jason could be a comedian because he likes to laugh, which made me laugh a lot. So even if this interview isn't your favorite, it was definitely one of my favorites. We joked about tornadoes, but later that day that we recorded, they did hit. And actually in St. Louis, they caused $1.5 billion of damage. There was 5,000 homes that were damaged. And 5 people in St. Louis died, 7 in Missouri. Now, Jason and I joked about it because tornadoes are a way of life in the Midwest, but we do know that they are serious, they're not to be played with, and our hearts go out to everybody impacted. At the 1 hour mark, my toddler crashed the interview, and at that same time, we jumped to a list of topics we wanted to make sure we discussed. So if the last third of the show seems all over the place, that's because we were managing all of that. Now, before we get to the show, I have a favor to ask. If you can take a minute, go find and subscribe or follow the podcast on your podcast app and or on YouTube. Now, the reason for YouTube is because we need 1,000 subscribers before we can run ads. And then on the podcast app, if you are willing to enable auto download, so that way, even if you're not planning on listening to every single episode, I'll get a download number from it. Now, you're going to hear me mention ads on the show today. It takes 6 ads for us to see 1 penny. So even if you skip an episode here or there, if you have that auto download enabled, it's still going to count as a play, which means we might get a penny or a half a penny. Now, if this sounds like a crazy request, it is. But I don't believe in shame, and therefore I have none. And there is another option if you'd rather be more reputable. And that is, if you do like the show, please become a Patreon patron. Now, the patrons, they are the ones who are keeping this show accessible and free for everyone. They're keeping us on the air. And they also get ad-free episodes and bonus content, in addition to having my utmost gratitude. So if you want to sign up as a patron, which would be super cool, you can do that at patreon.com/artisticfinance. And just in case you didn't hear that, patreon.com/artisticfinance. Without further ado, let's get to the show.
You are listening to Artistic Finance, where we help creatives learn about the business of show business.
Welcome and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Ethan Steimel, broadcasting from Lake St. Louis, Missouri. We are recording this May 15th, 2025. And today I welcome lighting designer, one that is hailing from the great city of Chicago, Illinois, Jason Lynch. Welcome, Jason. And what is going on in Chicago now?
Thank you. Good to be here. Right now, all in my brain is preparing for the Beyonce concert, which starts tonight. And I'm in the middle of a tech for a new dance piece with Hubbard Street at Harris Theater.
Amazing. All right. The Beyonce tour, is it just a one night thing or how long is it there?
I think she has 3 performances today, Saturday, and Sunday.
And I assume you're going?
Saturday, correct.
Amazing. I thought you were going to be like, I'm going tonight and the next night and the next night.
It was like, it doesn't matter. Every performance, I'll be there. No. But yeah, excited.
That's awesome. Yeah. Also,
like crazy weather tonight, so we'll see. But
oh yeah, the weather don't even get me started. So we relocated to Missouri, and it is just picked up for the summer heat, and the humidity is such a killer.
Yeah,
it's like
it's wild.
But wait, what is your weird weather in Chicago?
Today, well, they're saying a bit of tornadoes maybe in the area, in the region. And so, I'm all thinking about all the folks that are outside for this concert and hope that it goes well and we don't have any delay. It's just like
Yeah.
60,000 people expected. So,
Yeah, and you're not missing that
exactly.
concert. Like, we laugh about it, but it's like,
Yeah, I will be there with my umbrella, I guess.
I will find a place to hide from it if I need to,
Yeah.
but I will be there. Yeah. Amazing. All right. Well, if you're listening, you may know Jason from back on episode 176, and you can find that at artisticfinance.com/176. And we were talking with several designers and their agents about pay negotiations. But now we get a little bit of time with you, only you here. So, Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So based in Chicago now, crazy, entering my 10th year almost. We moved here in 2015. Pandemic happened, which is now 5 years later. So we're heading into my 10th year. Originally from Dallas, Texas. So I was super excited to be a part of, there's so many Texans that have been on the podcast, which is great. Originally from Dallas, to move here for more opportunity. Went to school at Texas Tech and originally started as the stage manager, and about halfway through kind of switched to lighting design. And then, graduated, went to Forestburg I think Forestburg Playhouse was my first summer internship right out of college. And then went to Syracuse Stage for a season to be the electrics and running apprentice for one season. And then was fortunate enough to get a job back in Dallas at home at the Dallas Opera, where I worked for about 5.5 seasons. And then in the summer, needing work in the summer, I applied. This is crazy. 2012, I applied to like 30 summer stocks, and Santa Fe Opera was one of them. And I got hired there, and I was there for about 6.5 seasons. So I was doing that Dallas Opera, Santa Fe Opera rotation for a few years. And then ultimately, when I moved to Chicago, I sort of started doing more freelance and sort of left both institutions. And ever since then, I've been freelancing. So it's been great. So.
Wow, that's amazing. And your career now, because you did so much opera, are you doing a lot of opera now?
It's funny. I stopped for like 5 years. And then last week, I actually opened up an opera at Detroit Opera that I did in 2022. And then next year, I have, I think, 2 operas with Washington National. So I'm jumping back into that rotation.
And I also love that you mentioned the Texas connection, because, yeah, there are so many people from the show that have hail from Texas. Although I'm thinking none of them actually live there anymore. Which is not a reflection on Texas.
True.
It's just the amount of theater work.
Yes,
that's the only reason. It's not, like, everybody seems to love like having been from there. And then also I was on LinkedIn, and I love to connect with people. So I was like, Jason Lynch, LinkedIn, here we go. And you have a profile. It is very old, and it said assistant lighting director or something at the Dallas Opera. And I was like, I mean, it's lighting, so this must be the right one. But there's no profile picture.
Nothing. That was back when like LinkedIn was like the thing to do. And so I was like, I guess I gotta have one.
Well, know that you now have a new connection request from me.
I will update it then. I will go through and update.
Go figure out the password. And then I also love, because there's a lot of people that have come through with a Jacob's Pillow connection, which I interned there in 2011, I think, 2012. And Forestburg Playhouse, I don't think I've ever had anybody mention it, but I did 6 seasons there, like a show a year from like 2015 to 2021, maybe even longer, maybe like 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
With a year off for COVID.
That's wild. Yeah.
And I just point these things out to show like how small the world is. Like,
yes.
Like, we joke that we know everybody, which we don't, but like we sort of do.
Right. You mentioned like one small thing. It's like, oh, I spent 3 months of my life at this place. We're like, wait, I was at that place. And it's so, yeah.
Yeah. And not, I love Forestburg. I love it. Not, but it is in the woods.
Yes.
Questionable sleeping arrangements, questionable several things. So there's this connection. Like, I would never compare ourselves to like soldiers fighting a war, but there is that sort of like vibe of like, we have gone through, like, we have willingly gone there, slept on like the cot, or slept on like the straw, like a stuffed pillowcase of straw with straw.
Yes.
And we have like lived that, or like where we're trying to take a nap while a show is going on, like like through the paper thin walls.
Where you can. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to explain like why it's amazing that we have these connections, because it's like, wow, I thought no one else suffered through that. but they did.
Yes. And it's funny, every time I mention Forestburg and maybe there is a connection, the first thing we say, "Where did you sleep?" Because it's just
Yeah.
it's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we could talk about this for another
Yeah.
hour because I want to tell you where I slept, but no. I'm moving on. All right, Jason, what is a live event that and you can't say Beyonce concert. What is a live event that you like to experience as an audience member?
Funny enough, I was in this crazy week, but my family vacation was in New York. We did 2 days in New York last week and 2 days in Atlantic City just to get everyone's taste in. And I saw MJ on Broadway. I had seen it on tour when it came through Chicago, and I get blown away with like the scale and like especially like money involved. But I thought Natasha Katz's lighting design for MJ was spectacular, and so I attend as much Broadway as I can because it's just a different world that I'm in. Like I'm in the regional world, and so anything that's commercial. I'm not saying Beyonce because like that is a part of like the thing that I like to do is like the designs are so beyond what we do in theater. It's just like I just like to go and see where the money is being spent in other places, and I find it just like really entertaining to see 150 moving lights, which is like nothing for some of these shows. It's just like I can barely get one in some shows, but yeah, that's my big thing.
That is awesome. And I'm just going to manifest here a little bit. If you're ever bored, there is a podcast called Why I'll Never Make It. He's an actor, but he interviewed Lynn Nottage. And Lynn Nottage, anyway, you should go listen to that interview just because she is such a fascinating human being. But she wrote the book for MJ. And I'm manifesting it here because I put an email out to her publicist person. And so I'm sure she will never see it, but because I said, will you do a 60-minute podcast interview unpaid with me? And I'm pretty direct, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about slipping into her Instagram DMs. She has 23,000 followers, but I think maybe I'll get through.
I think it'll happen.
But I'm saying out loud in case anyone listening is like, oh, I'm friends with Lynn. Let me just connect you up.
Just send her a quick text.
All right. So that is all amazing. Money now. Are you good, bad, or neutral with money?
Oh, geez. I thought I was good until we had our family vacation, and I was like, maybe I'm bad with money. I think I'm good. I think I'm aware of money. It's funny when I go out with other people and talk to friends and, the bill comes out and they just like swipe their card. And I'm like, are you aware of? And there are a lot of people that just sort of, they live day to day. But I think I'm good with money because I stay aware of the money that I have. And I think what also helps with that, it actually could be a bad thing, but every morning I get an email from my banks, sort of letting me know what's happening for the day. And, sometimes that makes me a little anxious about money, because nothing may have even changed for like 3 or 4 days, but because I get this email, it's always on my mind. It's like, well, I've had the same balance for 4 days. What's going on? It's just like, but I care about money way more now, especially with the pandemic, having gone through, trying to get unemployment insurance has like completely changed how I think about money. And so I try to be more aware of, at least for like day-to-day activities and like in the future, thinking about where money is going and then where money will be. It's really important to me now. So,
yeah, I think that awareness is very key because I remember Wilson Chin. He was like, I didn't really keep a budget, but I just knew, like, was I over? Was I under?
Right. Exactly.
And then Jill Twist, who was a writer, she was like, yeah, my first few years in New York, I made like 13,000 or 15,000. And she's like, and that may sound horrifying, and it was, but you can survive on that as long as you are aware of it.
Yeah.
And you make sure you're not spending more than that, which sounds crazy, but
yeah. Maybe one less matcha to, yeah.
So I sign on that you're good. I would agree with you there.
Oh, great.
Let me reinforce that for you.
Yeah.
All right. So going back before your career, when you were growing up, did you have good financial examples to learn from?
They did. My parents and like my family were great about sort of keeping me out of the business of money in a weird way. And it's funny, I think about this all the time because things are way more expensive today. We all know this than they were like when I was growing, because I just turned 38. And, this wasn't even that long ago. It just feels like a bag of chips was $1, but now it's like 3. And it's just like, but I had what I needed, so I never thought about money. But the unfortunate thing is like, even in like education, like the only thing I remember about education was how to write a check. But like no one taught about saving or like best practices with money if you had a surplus, and which is what I learned from the pandemic, right? I think many of us had a surplus, so we were making like regular paychecks for the first time of our life. And we're like, what do we do with this money? And like, had I had, even in my family, even the education to have, to know what the options were, I think I would be a lot better off today. But yeah, my family, like I had what I needed and that was enough. And I never like questioned it. So
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So then at the start of your career, when you got out on your own, what did your finances look like at that point?
I really didn't have any expenses. I didn't have a need for like a car. I got my car actually after I graduated from undergrad. I had my first car because I didn't need one in Texas. I just, whatever, the campus was closed, so I didn't need a car there. And it was Lubbock, Texas, so everything was, accessible. My only expense was probably my cell phone at that time. I always wanted a sidekick. This was back in the day, but I think I had like a Razor. And then, and it was just like day to day. I was one that maxed out my student loans. I know we're going to get there, but I maxed it out to live off of that. And I just lived off it. My only expenses were day to day, with my cell phone. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Max out those student loans, which actually not the worst thing to max out
No,
on
no,
because the interest rate, as much,
exactly.
they don't go away in bankruptcy and they're going to be with you until you die. But other than that,
Yeah.
they're socially acceptable and the interest rate is low.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, low interest rate over 30 years adds up.
Right.
But,
Exactly.
but nonetheless,
But-
it's not the worst.
Yeah. Not the 22% credit card. Yeah. It's just like,
Okay. So I think you've already answered this, which is, do you think or worry about money on a daily basis? And you said that you got an email every day. So to me, that means it's on your mind.
yes, I do. It's funny. I worry about the future of money because because things sort of pop up in my life and like everyone's life, right? And because we're not on a consistent pay schedule, and I may not know what shows I'm doing in 2 or 3 months, or like when those checks will come through, I do have to sort of keep a mental sort of budget in my head of like, well, if you're not expecting a fee for another few weeks, like you have to think about the money today because that you don't know. That's what like the thing I'm envious about. Sometimes not envious, but like I'm jealous of, people that have regular paychecks. Like, it's such a dream of mine to like, and that was what happened during the pandemic, right? When we got the unemployment finally, we finally got unemployment assistance as freelancers. I was like, wait, I'm making the same amount every day, every week. And it's coming to me every week, and I don't have to like think about next week because I know it's going to be the same thing. But yeah, I worry about sort of just like the future of what the income might be because the bills are reoccurring, like they always happen at the same time, but our paychecks do not. So I have to always think about how the flow of money will be. So
Like if you break a leg or something.
yeah, exactly. It was like our washer went out like last week, and it was like a $300 expense that just popped up, and so it's just like
Amazing. All right. I have to tell my washer story. So I just moved into suburbia and the washer, the door breaks. There's this part, the latch that you have to replace. So I order it next day on Amazon and there's a cheaper one, right? $10 cheaper. So I order both of them because I'm like, this part doesn't have the right words, but it looks like it's going to work. So it came, I fixed it with the cheaper one. So I got to send back the more expensive one. And the cheaper one was $28, right? So I'm sending back the $38 one. Anyway, but then Amazon was just like, okay, cool. You don't even need to send it back to us. So now I have an extra latch, but but like I never thought I could fix a washer. And man, Jason, I did it.
right, nice. See, that's exciting when you're like, all right, just do it. It's yours now. So,
but now we've jinxed us, and like next week it's actually gonna break.
No, right? Full replacement.
So student loans. Back to that. Only because it's going to creep up into this question. But do you have any debts right now?
I do not. I was very aggressive. That car that I got right out of college, it was a loan. And then I graduated with student loan. I had a little bit of a deferment, I think. I think it was 6 months. And I was very aggressive about getting rid of debt. And actually that may be related to the question earlier about like family. I grew up with debt. And so now I'm very terrified of debt. Because I know that, if you default on things and it will affect your future and the way that the American system is built. And so I'm like, as far as away, I can stay as far as away I can from debt. That'd be great. And so I got rid of my student loans I had about 30 grand when I graduated, which sounds so low now. But I got rid of it within like 5 or 6 years. I was actually in Santa Fe during one of the summers when I made my last payment and it was like so relieved. I was so relieved. Um,
Okay, that's amazing. So let's just say 6 years. So $5,000 a year for 6 years. That was while you were working at the Dallas Opera in Santa Fe. Like those were your full-time jobs.
yeah. And yeah, I remember that last payment and I was like, wait, cause I had been making a reoccurring pay. Again, this was like one of the times where, like the bills stay the same, but like the income does not. I remember making that I think it was these loans, they get sold back and forth so many times. And I made that last payment and then that next month came and I was like, what do I do now with this 300? I don't know what it was, but it was like, what do I do now? And had I had, the education that I had now about money, I would have made a better choice about what I do with them.
All right, we have to address this right now, Jason. If somebody is listening and they paid off their student loans this year or last year or are about to next year, and you're going to have $200 or $300 a month extra, put that into a retirement account.
Yes.
Keep the payment going. Just switch it into a retirement account. Switch it into a savings account, a Roth IRA, whatever it is. But don't let it go sit in your bank account.
Yes.
You don't have access.
Yes. Biggest life lesson.
I'm sure had you been listening to the Artistic Finance podcast at the day that you paid off your loans, maybe, just maybe there's a sliver of hope. You would have been like, what would Ethan do?
Yes, definitely. Like that money would have been put to use and I'm sure by now I would have seen the effects of it, which would have been really humbling. And that's why we invest, right? Is to see, the eventual effects of it. So.
Yeah. All right. So since you've paid off your loans and going up to now in your life, have you ever used a budget?
Yes, it's funny when I started freelancing and for tax reasons, I hate getting to the end of the year and not really knowing how much money I spent or where it's going. And so I started an Excel document. Actually, maybe now it's a Google sheet, but I have multiple sheets. I started an Excel document that has sort of just like, especially as freelance designers, where we get 3 to 4 or 5, if you have a per diem, checks per project. I was like, I need to be able to track these because they start overlapping and you get a first and then you get a third for another project. And so I created a document that sort of helps track that. And then when you get an agent, when we get into that, like that helps sort of tracking like what they've received. Because when you have an agent, the payments go to the agency and they may be a little bit delayed by the time they get to me. So I was like, I need to be able to track these. So I have a budget that I use that sort of uses the incoming income and then it sort of breaks down the monthly, like I talked about earlier, like the things that will always be there. And I sort of always adjust those numbers based on how the inflow of money. So.
Got it. So when you get a job and you know it's going to be coming in, you go in and plug that in. Like, I'll be getting this design fee.
3 payments and then,
Got it. Okay. Side note on the agent, because I've never had one. Do they get a chunk of like the per diem and stuff like that? Or is it only the design fee?
Per diem and reimbursements. A lot of institutions will also send that to the agency, but those, if they're not, they will send them directly to you, but the agency will also send them directly to me with no commission pulled out. So it's just another transaction, I guess.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Well, that sounds pretty organized. Question for you. So I also have an Excel document that is my tax document that I won't call my budget, but it is where I see the income. Do you, and this is just like a logistics thing and semantics thing, do you count like your per diem as income?
I do. For quarterly payments as well. Anything that's coming in to my account, I use it for figuring taxes, even if it's not taxable income.
Got it. Okay, yeah. I'm the exact same. I put any income, I just put into the income area, even if it's because like I know a lot of people who don't report like if they get $500, like it's you're not going to get a 1099 from it, but I just put it in just because
Yeah.
I just like it all there, and then I'm like,
Right.
oh,
You know, the total. And yeah, any income that comes in, I include it. So
got it. All right. So, what is the best financial thing you've done that other people could learn from?
I think it's starting the Roth. Like starting, I had when I was at the Dallas Opera, a programmer there who had been in the union forever. He was like, Jason, you got to get this going because I was early 20s when I started there, and I was like, oh, I don't have any money for all that. It's just like, and I promised him when I turned 30, I would take it serious, and I did. I started my Roth when I turned 30. I made my first contribution that year. And despite this past few months, it's been crazy, but it really grew a lot for the last 7, 8 years. And I was actually starting to see sort of like the growth. And I was like, yep, you're right. This is something that we should do as soon as possible. It's just like setting that nest egg. And I think also being current on your taxes and also keeping track of it yourself. Like we have agents and agencies that, the payments go to them. If I didn't want to, I didn't have to think about it. I can just wait to the end. But there have been times where there's been data that hasn't been the same from like my tax preparation or the agent, where because I was keeping track of it myself, I was able to help resolve an issue. And so even if you have like people assisting you, you have to keep your own you have to stay up on it, even if you have like an assistant helping you. So that's been life changing.
You just mean like, where's this payment? It hasn't shown up, or
Yes, yeah. Keeping track of, and also because the quarterly payment thing is complicated because I actually just learned because there's a delay from when I get them from the agency. I use the date that the check was cut, so then I can assign that to the quarter that I need to pay to the IRS because I may get the check in the next quarter, but it actually should be assigned to the previous quarter. Yeah, it's a lot of things that I keep track of to make sure that I'm paying the right percentages every quarter.
okay. So, and then you're doing that yourself, like
I
you're
am,
keeping,
yeah. So I get the check stub, and then I use the date in the check stub.
and so you add it up, and then you pay 30% of that, or
There's a
something like that.
percentage that my tax prep they want me to pay per quarter to IRS or state, and so I break that down. Yeah,
Wow, you are very organized.
it's a lot.
Because I mean, I feel like everyone else I know that pays quarterly, like, sort of does it based on the previous year,
Sure.
and you're actually like, when you said keeping current with your taxes, you mean you keep like exactly current.
Yeah, one of the questions so I get a sort of like a worksheet every day from the tax office, and it says, do you expect your income to be similar to what it was last year? And they use that number to sort of determine, because I think I do like 5% of every quarter's payment to the IRS, and then I think it's like 2.5 to the state for every quarter. And so they use like the income from last year as sort of the goal for the next year. So those percentages are based on me assuming that my income will be the same. But I have to do the math of like, all right, these 20 payments were in this quarter, so that's 3% to the state and 5%. Yeah, it's a lot. It's wild.
Wow, good work, Jason. And but I do want to reinforce that because somebody asked me at LDI, like, how do you keep track of like your payments coming in? And you've answered it here, which is you have to keep track of it.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you have to keep a list of the paychecks you need, and if you don't get one, you have to follow up on that. Like there's no other way to track
Yeah.
it because the IRS could potentially track it, but it won't be for like a year or two later.
Exactly. And they could come back with good news or bad news. So.
Always bad, always bad.
Yeah.
And actually, because even right now, I was just thinking today, just popped into my head that I did an NYU class visit where I talked to like their business of the business class, and they said they were going to give me a stipend, and that was 5 months ago, and they never did. And the only reason I'm even going to contact them is because I brought somebody else in with me, and so I'm like, oh, I don't think that person got their stipend either. So now I feel like I need to reach out, but I'm feeling bad because I was the one that didn't track it, and now it's 6 months later, I'm going to be like, hey, I know the school year's out, but that,
Well, that's actually the perfect example because that happened to me a few years ago where I was like, I'm missing this payment and I didn't say anything. And then like I forgot. And then I think they moved into the next fiscal year. And they came back and said, sorry, we can't pay you. And it was like a big thing. And I was like, wait, it's just, and so from that point on now, I make sure that
I will update this in the future, but knowing that what you've just told me, they've probably moved on to the next fiscal year. But it's okay. I also do want to bring up about the Roth IRA that you mentioned, that being a really good thing you've done. So do you still contribute to it?
I do. And actually this year, this year, 2025 was the first year ever that I contributed at the beginning of the year. Because one of the things that, we always hear this and say this, and good financial advisors, I think, say this, and they say pay yourself first. And so like when, holidays came around, I was like, oh my God, we're getting close to the first, because I knew that I was going to max it out. But this was the first year that I maxed it out at the beginning, and everything happened. So I was like, oh no, this is like.
But check back in at the first of next year, and I bet it's going to be good.
Yeah. So this is 2025 was the first year that I maxed it out at the beginning. So
awesome. And then this is just another reminder for people listening. If you have opened your Roth IRA, good work. If you have automated payments or you're putting payments into it, good work. But coming up on next week's episode, we need to say this point: make sure you're investing it.
Correct.
You have to get it in the account, but you also have to put it into the stocks or bonds or mutual funds, whatever it is that you want. So Jason, how do you do that when you put it in?
It's funny, when I started, I was a hot mess, and I had all kind of stocks because I was like, oh, they said you should invest in Tesla. Oh, they said you should invest in Microsoft. And I did all the things, made all the mistakes. And then I think it was probably 2 years ago, I went from like 70 to 80 stocks to like 10, and most of them are ETFs. The one thing that I learned, this is the thing about SPY, I use SPY, and it's what do we call it? I call it the big boys club, where it's like, if your stock or your company is not performing well, they will kick you out. So it's a very safe investment, I feel like, is to use some of the S&P 500, right? Is like, if your company is not performing well, they will kick it out. And I always say, although times now are lower than we want them to be, like the S&P 500 and those sort of large groupings of stocks, they are designed to go up. So don't be discouraged right now, and just know that, again, like I said, if this company is not performing well, they will kick them out, and then because they will make sure that stock is going up.
Exactly. And that's the great thing about the SPY, which we have a 6K update coming up, and our investment is the SPY.
Nice. That's great.
But it's that's the 500 companies.
Yeah.
And it's you don't have to manage it, because like you're saying, they take care of it and they kick people out.
Exactly. Yeah. It's wild.
Also, you saying 70 or 80 stocks, that I'm hyperventilating just thinking about owning.
I was in everything. I started because, they were like, okay, you should split into sectors and do a few banks, and then you should do some tech stocks, and then you should do some real estate. And so I was like, how about 10? How about 10? How about 10? I was terrible. It was just and funny enough, the one stock that has performed the best for me has been DraftKings. It's insane. It's like sports betting. It's just
yeah, I don't buy individual stocks, but I think when we started the 6K 4 years ago, DraftKings was people were like, it's going to do so well. Actually, I had somebody email me and say, hey, that should be one of your investments. And I ignored them just because I was like, sports or whatever.
Exactly. Same.
But they did say, they're like, it is projected for all these reasons, like online gambling and XYZ and blah, blah, blah. So we should have done it. But hey, that's great.
Yeah. And also, when I was gambling with money, actually gambling with stocks, I would stop, and I tried the dividend capture strategy, was what you you really focus on dividend stocks, and then you enter and exit around. It was just, I had too much time, and it was just. But yeah, I also I always talk about S&P 500, but dividend stocks, you gotta that should be a part of your portfolio to make sure it's sort of balanced. And so
that's my philosophy, because I am like you. Well, I'm different from you, but every stock I've chosen has failed me. And so I got so upset at one point that I was like, if I ever buy a stock again, it's only going to be a dividend stock. I don't care what the size of the dividend, but because that way, as the stock goes down, which all stocks that I pick go down. So as they're doing that, I will at least be getting a
some
penny
income,
a quarter.
Yes.
So I'm not a dividend like investor, but that is one of my rules is like has to have a dividend and SPY that has a dividend because so many of those companies are paying a dividend. Like they own Coca-Cola within that. So your share of Coca-Cola within that gives you a little penny every quarter. So anyway, so just doing the index funds and like spreading out, diversifying by that, where you're just owning one thing, which sounds not diversified, but it's 500 things. So it is diversified. But in doing that, you almost automatically are going to get a dividend because so many companies do that.
So many companies are putting into it. And I also like tell people, because a lot of people will reach out to me asking like, oh, what should I invest in? And I tell them like, first, I would spend, put some money into something that you believe in and also look outside. Like I will see I'm not joking, 80 Amazon trucks drive by my street a day. And so that's like a clue of like, maybe Amazon's doing okay, Pepsi, Coke, like all those companies, like that have been around forever. Like if you're looking for a place to start investing in, just look outside.
Yeah, I do. Thankfully, nobody ever asked me what to invest in. Um, but I do sort of have that philosophy of like, it's like, look around. It's like anything I'm putting money into, I mean, I'm giving them money. So therefore, like other people are giving them money. Therefore, they like have a business. Yeah.
I would say like in like how Apple has a chokehold on us, like how many Apple devices do we have? So that's another company that if you're, so.
Yeah. Well, in our 6K update, we're bringing in a new person, a patron of the show, Gary Archer. And the reason we're bringing him in is he talked to me once. There's like a company that builds LED video screens. And he's like, hey, what do you think about this company? And I was like, never heard of them. But they're totally in our industry. Like they're building all these things. And so he's like, I think he owns some of their stock and every once in a while he'll send me like an update on it. So anyway, but that's like not what we believe in, but it's like, that's our industry. That's like, we understand LED video screens.
Right. And they are here to stay. So
exactly. All right, Jason, you've done some wonderful things. What is the worst financial thing you've done that other people could learn from and not do?
Oh, geez. Not even that long ago. Remember when like what was it? GameStop and there was another company.
Yeah, AMC. I love it.
Yes, GameStop and AMC. I was like, wow, they're like really pumping this stock right now. And I put in, I think, way too much money and lost it within minutes. And so that was like maybe like having a reoccurring like paycheck is not a good thing for me because that was like, what am I supposed to do with this money? Like for the first time in my life, I have a steady income and I was like, I need to be investing it. Thanks to, people much smarter than me telling me that I should be doing that. And then I was like, wait, what's going on with GameStop and AMC? Like, it's just, oh my God. And so I lost a lot of money and jumped out of the stock market for like a year. And so
I'm sorry to be laughing at your misfortune.
No, it's funny. I'm also like, I'm very experimental with money. I think it's like I was like with cash, I'm terrible with cash. Like I just give it away to like people on the street because I'm like, oh, if you ask me for a thing, I'm going to give it to you. So it's just like...
But also, I think that's such a good way to be because I feel like I'm stingy and I don't like that about myself, And sometimes I feel like I do things to like prove that I'm not stingy, but I know inside that I am.
Yeah.
So that is like one of my goals in life is to just be a little more like fluid because it's like, yeah, give it to good causes, like give it to good things. Like,
right.
Instead of just like sitting it in the bank in which like bank people control it and they they're not good people, I don't think. Right.
Right. They're trying to do whatever they can to make money off your money. So yeah, it's just like,
there's this JP Morgan guy or no, wait, Jamie Dimon, that guy.
Oh gosh.
And it's like he says things and all this, but all I think every time I see him like being so smug, he's not a smug guy. I'm sure he's really nice, but I interpret it as smug when I'm reading what he says.
Right.
But like he has like such a strong opinion. And the reason his opinion matters is because he controls so much money. And then I'm like, well, I have a Chase bank account and therefore I'm like paying him to be so smug and like control the economy, which is just so like, anyway, it would be better if I donated that money and got rid of the bank account.
Also, yeah, someone who's also with Chase very heavily. Yeah, I hear you.
So, yeah, anyway. So I approve of being experimental with money. But that being said, any experiment I have ever done has ended in 100% loss of the money. Which is fine. It's fine. I would say you live and learn, but I just live. Um, all right, Jason, working with assistants or fellow designers, do you ever help other people negotiate pay?
I do. I always say like the people that assist or sort of like are with me on projects, I try to take care of them much more than I do about with myself. I because I can see as an assistant, I was an assistant for like over 10 years, and I could see how assistants and associates, or even like some programmers, get sort of just like they don't because institutions may not understand the great thing that they give and they benefit. The benefits of having a great assistant and a great associate, I think I fight really hard to make sure that they are taken care of. Because also like I have a set pay that I make, right? But I think the assistants in it's in some weird like no man's land where it's just like, oh, we don't know what they should be paid. And so I spend a lot of time making sure that people understand that they are in very important roles. And especially now with like, it's in the American theater where we've like condensed everything and made the process so tight that we really need more support to do the things that we do more than ever, I think, today. And so I spent a lot of time, talking to general managers about this money is not enough. Like, or we need other things to support these individuals that are giving up a large portion of their time and their life, to be in a dark room, for hours and weeks at a time, that at least it's nice to know that you're going to be compensated for that. Yeah, it's a lot of time and energy to make sure that and a lot of my own money. Like if we just can't find a nice common ground, I will still use a lot of my own. I use a lot of my own resources to help folks out. So
Yeah, I do that too. And then I'm like, am I subsidizing? I know I'm subsidizing, you know?
right,
It's like,
yeah,
but yeah, and the time thing is I feel like I'm so stressed out a lot of times in tech, and I think the reason is because I'm not doing the proper prep ahead of time.
mm,
Like
sure,
me getting a Q stack in shape and like that could make my tech so much smoother, but because the pay is such a thing, there's so many things that I don't want to ask the assistant to do because in my experience, like the assistants really get like a week or a week and a half of decent pay. And so
yeah,
I'm always like, well, that week is in tech. And so then they're going off of like a half a week. So I'm just very conscious of that. And I should advocate for them more and like push for them to get like double the fee or whatever. I'm saying it right here. So that's like what I'm going to try to do is like, be like,
right.
look, we have to do the prep work. Like the drafting and takes longer than tech. Like it takes longer than that.
It does, and it's a part of the process too.
But I think like I'm naturally like high strung, but I think in tech, like I'm extra high strung because it's like I'm doing like presets and all these other things that like this should have been pre-pro, but like because I'm going like gig to gig and trying to switch it all, like get it all, and I'm trying to make as much money as I can.
Right,
So I'm taking multiple gigs and stuff, and so then I like sometimes I like dread tech because I'm like so stressed out because I'm like I haven't
oh my
taken the
god,
time because I
same,
don't feel compensated enough to justify doing the proper prep work.
right, right. That's interesting.
So anyway, this is just me talking. Let's all like pretend that I'm a really good designer, and I didn't say all that.
No, but it's like realistic. It's a part of the conversation where it's like, because I don't think people understand how much work we do just to get to the point of focusing the show. Like, I don't think, or the amount of work that we have to do or need to do to be able to tech a show in 2 or 3 days. Like, I don't think people really understand.
Yeah, it's
um,
crazy. But anyway,
yeah.
uh, uh, Jason, I'm gonna skip this next one unless you want to answer these, which is how did you get your first industry job? How much did it pay? And then how did you get your latest job? How much did it pay? Do you want to answer those, or can I skip
Sure.
those?
Yeah, answer them quickly. I mean, I will say like my first it's funny, my first sort of like life-changing job, I feel like, was I got like a random gig at OSF. I say random because it was like, we don't know you, you don't know us. Will you interview for this position? And that was a production of Hairspray probably like 6 years ago. And it sort of like changed my life and sort of really thrust me into the regional world. That was, yeah, about 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
What is OSF?
Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so that was like one of my early, sort of like when I really thrust into freelance gigs. And then recently, I mean, we're in the middle of sort of 2026, sort of prepping for that. So just a lot of various things, but
Got it. And how, like, so that OSF job, you just applied like on the website or something?
No, I think production management reached out for me to chat with the director. We chatted, and like 2 days later, I got the job. So it was just like, but it was just funny because that was actually that was my first time ever actually in that region too. Like I had never been to California, never been to Oregon. So yeah, so I had a chat with the director, which is how I get most of my works actually is through directors, and or production management connecting me with the director, which is probably how I get 90% of the work that I do. So
Yeah. And do you know the production managers, or did they just reach out of the blue?
they just reached out. Yeah, it was yeah. And to this day, I actually should ask them. I was like, because I've worked there since on some other projects, and I was like, I should just say, how did you find me? It's just like,
Don't
yeah,
ask the question because it'll be just
yeah,
like totally random. Like
yeah.
you just randomly typed in a name and
Google,
misspelled it, and you showed
yeah,
up.
yeah, without the Y. Yeah.
We were actually looking for Jason Lashy, and
Yeah.
Jason Lynch showed up. That's
But yeah,
amazing.
life changing. So
Oh, wait, Jason, there's a famous lighting designer. That's not you. That's his name,
yeah,
Jason. Lyons. Jason
lions.
Lyons.
Yes, right.
People listening are gonna be like, you couldn't remember Jason Lyons' name? What's wrong with you?
There's been a few emails that come through, and I'm like, "Did you mean Jason Lyons?" Because it's just yeah. So yeah,
Oh my gosh. This is the conspiracy theory. Jason Lynch, JL, Jason Lyons,
yes,
JL, and Jason Lashy, JL.
JL. Yes.
Oh,
All
yikes.
lighting designers.
Never get in the same room all together. Like I
Yeah,
just don't know why,
right.
but just don't do it. Um, okay, Jason, which job of yours has been the best compensated? And please don't say unemployment during pandemic.
So besides that, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, they really pay you for your time. I think, and I'll say the number because I think it's the minimum ish. But it was 13,000, which was like in opera land, like that's like opera fees. And yeah, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, I really felt, I mean, I just love working there because not only are you paid for your time and your artistry, you don't have to think about money because like the fee is great, the institution is great, and has been. And when I've gone back, like it's great to be able because also the residency is quite long. So when I say they pay for your time, like they include that, like that's a part of the fee. Because of the rep, you just have to be there for quite a long time, and so the fee actually compensates you for that, which is great. And also, it's great to like be able to work on your one project and like have like a steady house to, because I definitely, most of the designers, when we work at Oregon Shakes, we actually maybe leave and go do another project between techs or previews and come back because we have that much time. But yeah, Oregon Shakespeare Festival has been great and I love going there. So
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. And so you only do one show when you're there, not multiple.
usually I did two the last time I was there. I did the musical and then one of the outdoor shows. But the first time when I got hired, the first time it was one show, and I think I was there for like 3 months. And it was so great to work on one show. So
All right. Well, I'm so glad you said that number too, because the highest I have ever been paid for theater was $6,000.
mm,
And then after that, $4,000. So I've only had the $6,000 fee once.
once,
So
wow,
I'm just saying that out, throwing that out into the world because actually I think I talked about this a couple episodes ago, which is that I have this whole issue with the vesting in the pension for USA
yeah,
829. and I've just given up, like decided like I'm never going to vest. But then I was looking at it and for the rest of this year, I need like 14,000 or something. And so if I had a 13,000 gig, like that would pretty much get me there. But
same,
instead,
yeah,
like with my $3,000, $4,000 fees that I usually get, I have to do like 4 of them, which I don't think I have enough time to.
right, yeah,
Anyway, but now that I know that a $13,000 gig exists, I will
yeah.
be I will be sending off an email to be like, I would like to say that Jason Lynch is not that great of a designer, but Ethan Steimel is pretty
Best,
good.
yeah,
So probably just
please,
actually Jason wanted me to say this. He said,
yeah,
please replace me.
yeah, I'm unavailable, yeah,
I'm just kidding. That's not like me.
yeah.
I am supportive of everybody working everywhere all the time.
No,
And
but like it's
Jason,
definitely a place that like I'm always like, if you can do it, it's a place that I say yes to. Not only because of the fees, but I just love the folks out there and the artistry. So
amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Do you have an entity, a corporation, LLC, anything like that?
I do. It was another huge thing that I learned about. I think I started in December of 2019. which had amazing benefits. And I will always say that do it. I learned that the United States of America is basically three large corporations in a trench coat, and they value businesses much like they really value business in this country. I think that's been apparent over the last 5 years. I hope that more people see that. And so I did it, and I was able to really take advantage of a lot of the business things that happened with the pandemic, and a lot of those different loans that were forgiven and all that stuff. That was helpful. So yeah, I have an LLC that I started in 2019. So
That's amazing. I have an LLC and I did not take advantage of any of those loans because I'm so paranoid that I was like, I don't want to take a loan because I have to give it back.
And I also will say, it's not too late either. You can still, and even with Chase, there's still opportunities for you to use some of the business banking and business loans at pretty low interest rates still, even, after the hikes happened, post-pandemic. They're pretty decent compared to using credit cards and things.
So when you work for, do a show, you're getting the paycheck, not the LLC.
The LLC gets the paycheck. Yeah.
The LLC gets the paycheck.
Yes. Which is the agency will or the union will loan out the name. It's kind of complicated, but they pay the LLC and then they send the check to the LLC. And I actually just learned because I'm dealing with the Kennedy Center right now, and because it's partially government funded, they're unable to pay the LLC. This is the first time this has ever happened. So if there's anybody listening that's like, "Oh, that's crazy. That's not how that works," just please let us know. But we've been fighting it for a few months now. So yeah, it must be individually paid because apparently that's legality that it's above our heads. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Don Holder was the same way. He gets loaned out. So it'll be on a union contract, but he'll get loaned out and the corporation will get the paycheck.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it all sounds like an extra headache. And I just closed mine last year because I was
oh, really?
I don't want to deal with this. I'm not using it properly, And now you're like, oh, you should totally do it. I'm like,
definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. I just think there's advantages, like I said, the way that this country sees, and it takes care of businesses is unlike most other countries. And I think it just opens up doors to other opportunities for you as a business owner.
Yeah. I think part of the reason I closed mine was it was New York and I had to file quarterly taxes and I kept missing it and they fine you $50 every time you miss it. So then I was just paying these $50 fines for me.
Yeah.
So now that I'm in Missouri, which is Wild West,
right.
What you're saying, we love business over here for no apparent reason. Maybe I can reopen it up. And then I just learned from last episode that Sven Ortel, he was saying the tax ID that I used for that LLC, I think I can still use it for my new LLC. I just have to move it to Missouri. So in a way, nothing's changed. And even though I closed the LLC, potentially that tax ID is out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, tangent. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted because I've also thought I could open up an LLC for this podcast, which hasn't made any money. But Jason, let me tell you, this is an exciting day, a super exciting day. So this podcast has been around for 5 years. We just made it past 5 years. We have 54,000 downloads. And
wow.
I checked today. At some point, I was able to run ads. So anyone listening who's had to deal with the ads, I'm sorry, but tough it up, okay?
Yes.
Because listen what you're doing for me.
Yeah.
So we have played 15,008 ads
wow.
throughout. And this month, I am going to now get, after 5 years, $23 for those 15,000 ads that have played.
That's amazing.
So for every 6 ads, for every ad that plays, I get 1/6 of a penny.
Wow. I always say, better than nothing.
Now, if anybody's hearing that and sounds ridiculous and wants me to take off the ads, I'm not going to, because every 5 years, I'm going to get $23. And if you really want me to stop them, you can sign up and become a patron, because 1 year of patron membership at the lowest tier, I think, is $30.
$30.
So
it's great.
So one year would pay me more than all the ad 15,000.
Wow.
Anyway, just thank you for that tangent. It's quite
That's
a monumental, because you have to pass a $20 threshold in order to get the payment. So I've had $19 of ads just sitting there, and finally I made it past that $20 threshold.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
That's exciting.
All right. So you mentioned taxes and you're very on top of it. Do you file your own?
I do. Yeah. I mean, well, I have a preparer that does it. I submit tons and tons of documents to him every year. And then he comes back with arbitrary numbers that I don't understand. And then I pay whatever he tells me to pay. And then, yeah. So I do that every year and pay him a fee of that. So
Got it. Okay. Awesome. I like how you're like, I do it, but then I also send it to somebody.
I know it's very weird. Like the amount of work that I do to send it to someone to do more work is
No, I feel the same way because it's like, yes, I don't file my own taxes technically. Like I send it off to somebody, but I know they're doing work, but like I'm doing most of the work. Like I'm doing most of it. So it's always weird. Like, oh yeah, somebody
yeah.
does my taxes, but also like I do hours
Yeah,
and hours and
I know.
hours.
Yes. And I think the thing for me that eats up the most time, also because I don't keep track of it throughout the year, I always wait till the last minute and then like, wait, what mileage did I do? And so I go through like my calendar from like the beginning of the year all the way to the end, and then I calculate the mileage. And it's so much work. Just,
Wow. Like you like go through your calendar and you're like, oh, I drove to there and back. And then you
correct.
add
Yeah.
that up. Got it.
Yeah, and I have a separate Excel that because my calendar is insane as far as the way I track things, which is like this is also another thing I always want to talk about because some people will just put like tech rehearsal, but like I put in every single hour of the day what I do. And so then at the end of the year or the next year, I will go through and say I drove from here to there. And so my calendar sort of becomes like a bit of a diary / tax preparation document. Which I just that's just the way my brain works. So I just use it that way. So
All right. So I was just pulling up to make sure I say this right, but we did a tax episode and there's Artist Tax Prep. They have an Excel document that I'm going to link in the show notes. But one of the tabs in that is how to keep track of your mileage expenses.
nice.
But it does exactly sort of what you're saying. It just says like the date, the destination you were traveling, the number of miles, and then and then like expenses that you incurred if you had extras, like maybe if you paid for gas or something. So anyway, so if anybody wonders how to do that, check out this Excel document. Well, it's a Google Doc. It just plugs it in. And then it has a list of questions over on the side, like what was your odometer reading at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year? Do you lease or own the car, like payments? So I assume they figure out more like if you can write off more than just the mileage, stuff like that.
Sure.
So man, Jason, you are so organized.
There's so much work.
I wish I didn't have to be.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk retirement. We mentioned Roth IRA. We mentioned an unvested pension for Ethan. What does your retirement plan look like, or what are all the pieces of it if you have a plan?
Yeah, I kind of don't, I think, but it's all the things that the union invest. Like I look forward to like when I actually take advantage of that, what that will be. I have the Roth. I actually have a few various brokerage accounts with like I have one with like Fidelity. I think Fidelity's one. Ally, who was my first sort of like investment bank because they had the highest. I think they still might be. Ally Bank had the highest interest rates, so that's one of the first banks I ever used when I started my savings account. But I have an investment account with them because it was attached to my checking and savings. So it was just easy to open. Which has a few stocks invested in. I did the Webull experiment, which is another brokerage company. I did the Robinhood, which I have. I have like 30 accounts. It's insane. Like during the pandemic, I was like trying everything.
Well, when I did the 6K, when I invested in those like 5 things for us, I was like, okay, I'll put one in Robinhood, one in Webull, one in M1 Finance. And then it just became like all these things to track. And so I've slowly been downsizing and like putting them all together because I just hate having so many accounts, if not for only the reason that like at tax time, I then have to like go get the Robinhood thing that says like you made 10 cents in dividends. And it's like, oh my gosh, I had to go like that. It wasn't even worth the work. So like,
right.
I also read or heard somewhere recently, I'm going to have to go soon because my toddler is climbing out of the bed. I have the baby monitor here.
Oh, yeah.
He has learned how to climb out of the crib 3 days ago. So hang on, Jason. I have to text my wife to be like, can you get him? All right. So back to this retirement. Oh, yeah. But it was somebody that was saying on a podcast or an article that there's so much money lost in like retirement funds. And so that's another reason where I'm like trying to downsize and like put it all together where it's like if I have a little IATSE annuity or something, I can like gather it up and put it like all in one
Yeah,
place.
in one. Because it's also like I'm finding that, this is one thing with actually Steppenwolf. I only mention that because I keep getting these from principal. I keep getting these emails about like having an investment or retirement account, but a lot of institutions will automatically start these things. I'm like, oh God, it's another account. So it's also like I think folks should look into these institutions if you never worked there to see if they're automatically enrolling you in these things because it is another account that you need to manage. So
Yeah. Amazing. So then outside of retirement, you mentioned like the Robinhood and the Webull, which are not necessarily retirement, just brokerages. But do you have any other sort of investments or anything?
I have shared because I don't have the money to purchase full out real estate. But I have Arrived is a company and Lofty, are sort of these like tech startup companies that allow you to share investments in like real estate. So I have like 4 properties that I've put in probably like $100 each into with shared investors, and we sort of manage this property. I didn't realize I was just like doing this to do something fun, and I didn't realize like this is like a legal thing where we have to have meetings about tenants not paying rent and like what do we want to do. So it's just like, but yeah, Lofty and Arrived, if you're like just sort of, it's a way for you to invest in real estate without putting hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s into it. And so I have a few $100 in that. Like I said, I'm very experimental with money, so.
No, I think that's awesome. And real estate is one of those things where I feel like I need to do an episode or two on it. I've done like one in the past that I wasn't a big fan of. But I know that there are people who are like landlords, and there's just so many options when it comes to it that I'm always like,
Yes.
and everyone's always like, it's such a good investment. So yeah. So
Yeah,
no, I
I
support
agree.
that
Yeah.
investment as well.
Yeah. I try to be pretty diverse with like any money that I have, right? I want to put it out to see that I get the highest return, some sort of return as possible. So I try everything. So
All right, charity or that, do you give back to the universe in any way?
I do, physically and mentally. I do work at the food depository. I do volunteer there. And I do, a lot of times people will like reach out with sort of opportunities to help nonprofit institutions, and I would throw a few bucks. Especially now with like all the NEA stuff, like I'm having to determine like what institution did I want to really support because they all need it. But I try to give something to institutions that especially have given something to me. I try to give back to those. So usually like anything that has to do with hunger, like I do not tolerate people not having something to eat. So I will, being hungry and unhoused is something that I'm very passionate about solving that issue. So I will always try to find opportunity to support those. So
Got it. Amazing. All right. I think now I'm bringing the toddler in. So
yeah. Great.
all right. If anybody's watching the video, I now have a toddler that woke up from his nap.
So cute. Starting early, talking about money. That's important.
Yeah. Oh God. He's unhappy. He's unhappy.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So Jason, this is the first episode where I want to do something called real numbers. And this was Asia Jackson's really a supporter of this segment. So I'm wondering, is there a recent project that you can think of or that you're willing to share this information for? But could you give us like what a fee on a recent project is?
Yes. I actually want to shout out to Indiana Rep because they asked me to do a project that's coming up next season, and I think it's an alert D. So it's I think the minimum is around 3,800 for next year. But they actually raised it to 5. They were very honest with me, and they said that we appreciate the work that you do here, and we appreciate your artistry. So they raised it up from the minimum Lord D rate to 5, and so I just want to shout out them for doing that. I really appreciate it, and it's important to. And I always tell people like I'll do a show for free, and like if I'm supported and I have the resources to sort of get the job done and I feel good about it, but to be sort of like for them to acknowledge that they value me is great. So.
And did they raise that fee just because they were raising all the fees, or was it you asked for a higher fee?
I didn't. I literally got the interest and availability, and they said, this is the minimum, but because we value you and your work, we're willing to pay this much more. And so I was like, wow, that has happened probably once in my life. um, yeah, it was great.
Okay. Is there anything else that you negotiated as part of it, or was this just a fee?
Just the fee. I always tell people like ask for what you need to do the work that you do, and the funny thing is having a desk is really important to me. It's very weird to be able to do like things like this, and like I do a lot of chats with students, and we have a lot of meetings with designers, and I say like having a private space is something that I really negotiate with my agent. And we always try to ask for a private housing also to have, to be able to do the work that we do and have table space and all that things. But yeah, that's usually what we sort of always negotiate. So,
Got it. And was there an assistant on this one or anything like that?
not this one. No. This is a play. I've actually seen the play. There's a play next season that I don't think I'll need assistant support, which is great. Yeah, so that's coming up next season, which I'm excited about. I love going to Indiana Rep. It's a place that sort of has become a home. So
There was a couple things you had mentioned in email, and I just put them all into this document. You had mentioned work-life balance in Chicago. How's that going?
great. No, I'm always when I leave in Chicago and I come back, like I find it to be a pretty magical place, and especially like now when we head to like May's, like a lot of folks are graduating and they're like, "What do I do? What do I do next? Or what can I do next?" And I think that Chicago is a great sort of like stepping stone to wherever you want to go in your career. Because I get a lot of folks who say, "Oh, I want to move to New York, but I'm not sure if that's the right move right now." And I would say like we have so many Broadway shows that start. If you're really passionate about commercial work or Broadway, I would say Chicago's a great place to start because we have so many shows that start here that you can get the experience and get a sense of what it's like in that commercial world. And also like we have huge concerts and we have touring and there's just a lot. So I'm a big anyone that's like interested in a city, I think Chicago is a place that you can definitely look into. So
And how was your path there since you're not from there? How did you end up there?
yeah, I mean, I had a lot of folks that either wanted to move here, or I had a lot of folks actually like Santa Fe Opera. A lot of my friends lived here, so I felt a little bit more safe moving to Chicago than I did opposed to like New York or even California, like one of the three. So
Okay, so but you just picked a big city and
yeah,
moved there.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because
a great.
that's still ballsy.
Yeah, you
Even
know, like being from Dallas, smaller town, to just move to Chicago. Yeah, it's just like,
awesome. Okay, KIH.
oh, keep it human. Yeah, I with so much. Yeah, this is something that I actually started when talking about general managers and sort of like advocating for what you need and want to do your work. I realized that I am the most successful when I stop and I take a pause before you want to have that response that it's just going to destroy your career, you feel like, but like stop and take a break and just remember to keep it human. So I have a little sticky that says KIH. And every time you're having a conversation or interaction with someone, either put yourself in their shoes or like remind them that you are human and that the things that you're asking for or advocating for is because you want to stay alive or you want to be the best at what you do and do the best work that you do. So I tell everyone to just stop, take a breath, and before you respond, before you have an interaction, to keep it human. And to remember that there is a human on the other side of that computer or that screen. So just make that connection. So
I love that, especially because I'm holding like this little whiny toddler right
right.
now. Boy, we are keeping
Yeah,
it human,
keep
man.
it human.
Thank you for dealing with me, Jason.
Yeah.
Okay, then problem solvers versus problem finders, and I feel like you might be calling me out here. I'm going to be honest.
No, and I wrote that because I was having a difficult time that day in that process. And I think there actually is a 50-50 split between those that are problem solvers and problem finders. And, I was in the middle of a process last week where I felt like everything was becoming more and more of a problem. And I always feel like, and I tell theaters this all the time, that I'm a guest to this institution. Like what we put on paper is sort of an idea of a thing. And those that work in the institution every day, 9 to 5 or whatever, like they will always know the best result to get to what you're thinking as a designer. And so instead of finding problems and with what we say is, visiting artists or guests, like I wish and I hope for more problem solvers in the industry. Because with all they always say like pick three can be cheap, fast, or the three. And I'm finding a lot of problem finders, unfortunately. than I am those that are being willing to sort of find a solution to the problem. And so I just, again, with keeping it human, I hope that we will have more problem solvers.
Yeah, I like that. That's how I feel about life. It's like be the person to solve the things, not
Yes. Yeah.
find them. Yeah, okay. He wants to swing. There's a swing right next to me off camera.
Yeah.
So you're going to swing in a second, but let me ask you this. Assistants and associates and how they can support you the best. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Because I also a part of like when I talk about giving back, like I get a lot of not cold emails, but a lot of folks that just want to, be in the industry and they want to work and they assist. So I have a list of folks that I hope to find a project that we can all collaborate on. And so one of the questions I always get is like, how can I best support you? And it's funny because I was an assistant and I grew up with technology in a way that like the people before us didn't have technology, like tracking. Like I remember, tracking moving lights was such a big thing, way back. It was like, this was new. So we didn't trust the technology. So we were tracking these, color and moving lights. And now I personally really trust the console. I haven't had a show file, knock on wood, fail on me in a very long time. So like when assistants, they ask me, do you want me to track moving lights? I always say, what? I don't need that. So, but the thing that I need as an assistant, I always tell assistants, even associates, like your title might be whatever your title is, but you are a design eye. And I am very open and I have an invitation for that. And so anyone that's like listening and thinking about, oh, what can I do to support the designer? It's like, remember that you are a designer in your own you're right. And so please like offer, obviously like I need those extra set of eyes, because I could be focused on one thing. And so please feel like you are a part of the design team. Not that you just have to sit there and like keep paperwork updated. Like I actually, that bores me when I see an assistant just doing that. Like I actually invite them to like, what are you thinking about? And also it keeps me honest. If I have an idea that I've been running with and if I've been doing the show in blue the whole time and all of a sudden it goes purple and like having an extra set of eyes to be like, why did you go purple there? To be like, oh, right, you're right. This was the thing. Like you're jumping off the rail. And then because it could be because I'm tired. It could be because like I'm just trying to get through the show. But like I always say, you are an equal part of the team. So make sure that you're present is very important to me. So
I love that you mentioned moving light tracking. But no, I never understood tracking moving lights because I did that when I assisted first for like 5, 6, several shows.
Yes, same.
And I never understood why, because it was like, by this point, it was like 2006. It's like we got the ETC Ion and it was like, it does the work for you. Like, I don't understand. And I'm the same way. It's like, you will know if that light is not available for you.
Right. Yeah. And also like a good programmer, right? I can be like, oh, I want that. I love to do squares. I don't know why that's become my thing. Like I love boxes of light because something about the circular native nature of a light drives me crazy. So I like to do tons of boxes to shape space. And so a great programmer will always be like, you already have a box over there. That's preset 25. So, it's just like, and I also say like the programmer, and this is actually a conversation I had with a programmer I worked on the show last month. It's like, where does the programmer fit? And sort of like, are they, I talked about unionizing programmers. And there was an argument for like, do they belong with us as designers or do they belong with IATs? It's like, where do they fit? And I was like, a great programmer for me is like a designer and they understand the intention and they can sort of support me in that way. So
for paychecks though, they're probably better off with IATSE, I'll be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I was talking to her and she was like, I think I might want to be with the IATSE.
Oh yeah, definitely. You don't, for how much work they have the potential to make or like hours they have to put in for like that very specific skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are way better off with IATSE. But I do agree. I only want to work with programmers that have the design like understanding.
Yes, definitely.
Because it is like they're bridging that gap between like stagehand, board op, and designer.
100%. Yeah.
All right. This one probably has nothing to do with theater, but I really want to talk about it because you mentioned it, which is resources for furnishing your life for free.
Oh, I'm so annoyed. I talk about this every day because I was doing a show. It wasn't that long ago. It was in December, and I was just like chatting with one of the actors, And she was like, "Oh, I just moved up here from New York back to Chicago." And she lives up north. And she was like, "Up here," she said, "the estate sales are really great." And I was like, "Estate sale? I didn't even think about estate sales." So then I went on a estate sale kick, and my life is changed. There are so many, like, I will never buy another piece of furniture again in my life because it's just like, I always mention this to people, like, if they're moving or looking for anything. I was like, "Have you tried an estate sale?" Because it's just, and I remember the first one actually we went to, there was a piano that was like an upright piano worth thousands and thousands of dollars that they were giving away. I say giving away because it was only $500. And I was like, if I had a truck, I would. So I'm about like estate sales and Facebook Marketplace and all those things to furnish your life is great.
I love this because we actually had somebody talking about the Dave Ramsey method on Greg Ludlow. He was on the show, and his business is estate sales. Like they just run estate sales for people. It's in Springfield, Missouri. I've never been to one, but they look exciting.
Yes. Estatesales.net.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So my version is like we just moved into suburbia, and it's the first time we've had a house, and we've almost been here a year. But if you visited us, you would be like, "You don't have any furniture," and you would be correct. And so estate sales don't really work for me in the sense that like you have to have like the truck or whatever there to like pick up the thing, and so that's where I'm like I don't want to deal with that right now. But Facebook Marketplace, the amount of things I have picked up for free is crazy.
Yeah.
And I love it too. So like this has never been a phenomenon in my life until now where I'm like, we've gotten a chair, we've gotten a kitchen table, like
Yeah.
a fire pit, a grill. We have all these things that I did not pay for.
And I think it is in my head, just I made up some narrative that like estate sales were literally just like old photos or old photo frame, but like it's like everything. Like there's all kind of things.
No, the weird thing about estate sales is that like they have everything because it's like somebody drops dead.
Yeah.
And then it's like their life. And it's like if you were to drop dead, like everything would be
Yes.
available. You're not just getting rid of like what you don't have. It's like
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
And so that's why they are so convenient, though inconvenient for the dead person.
And for whatever reason, like the family doesn't want to, they just want to just get rid of it. So yeah, it's great.
Which knowing that Greg does estate sales, I'm like, yeah, if I ever, this is weird.
Right.
Inevitably, I'll probably have to deal with my parents' like
Right.
house.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to be like, hey, siblings, let's do an estate sale because none of us like, it's going to take emotion out of it. And yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, weird side tangent there. Organizing it all, work-life balance. Have we talked about that enough?
I think so. Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier, like, I have, and also with my agent, I have a shared Google Doc that has all my projects, that he's able to like see what's going on. And as interest and availabilities come through, we just have a shared language of an understanding of, being able to make a decision about projects. So yeah, tons of Google Docs, calendars. So.
That's interesting. I like that because I sort of run things by Nicole. According to Nicole, I never run anything by her. But according to me, I run everything by her and we talk about it. Yeah. And I like that shared document with your agent to, I guess, just look at your career as like,
right. Yeah.
Make decisions that way. I sort of like that, having another person to talk with. Cool. Okay. So unions, agents, academia, etc. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah. I mean, I just know that the question always comes up about, especially like grad school. And it's funny, like I actually learned today that less people like we're not hitting the numbers, of course, that we used to with like enrollment in universities, which is interesting. And there seems to be like this a little bit of a pipeline straight into the industry that has never existed before. So I'm like, I don't know how I feel about grad school and undergrad, but again, I think it's for me, I did not go to grad school because I didn't want to pay for it. Like I said earlier, like I was just terrified of debt. And this was when I was looking at grad school was before you could go for free, really, at many institutions. And so again, like now I think the opportunities are different for you to be able to go to grad school. But like if you feel like it's important to you, and it's one thing that I do miss is sort of just like working together as a team. Because I always say like being a designer is very lonely. It's like we create this thing at home by ourselves and we go into the theater for a few weeks and then we do it again and again and again. But one thing I do miss about academia is like having this shared group of cohorts that are just like in the same, going the same distance, trying to get to the same end goal. So if you miss that, I think going to school will be helpful to learn from others and just have that sort of common goal. So.
Wow, I missed that about school too. Because it's like, yeah, you like everybody that's working on the thing and you're like, this is how you put it together and that's all true. But then when you get out, it's like you're never working with the same people over and over again. Or if you are, it's like the director or the designers that you're working with time and time again, which is nice. But there's so many new people on every single project.
Yeah. And learning from each other. Like I remember like I was peer pressured into getting my first Mac. It was just like, because I was like, Vectorworks for me just found on my Windows machine. So like everybody was getting like the new MacBook Pro. And I was like, well, I guess I should get the new Mac.
I didn't get peer pressure until after grad school. And that was because like I had to get a new computer. And I was like, well,
yeah.
I don't know. I just basically it was airdrop. It was in tech, and everyone's airdropping to each other. And I'm like, well, I want to airdrop.
Here's my flash drive. You know,
you're laughing, but
that's good.
Okay, that's awesome. And grad school. That's a thing. I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't need to talk about that. I don't. Yeah. If I were to live my life again, I want to do it. But I've said that enough times. Right. Yeah. IRS.gov.
Oh yeah, I don't think people know about. It's funny. The IRS.gov is a place that sort of they store all of your sort of financial data at IRS.gov. Like you have to have, I think, an ID.me account. And you can log in and see like account transcripts. You can get transcripts of previous years. You can see wage reports. You can see every transaction that has been paid to the IRS. So IRS.gov, I think, is a great, and I usually use that when I'm filing my taxes to make sure that, especially with quarterly payments, they will show every payment that was sent to the IRS. So you can just like use that as a guide to make sure that when you're prepping your taxes, that you understand what the IRS thinks you have contributed. So I definitely, everyone should like just go in and make an account and check out your information with IRS.gov just to see your transcripts.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. And obviously I'll put a link in the show notes for it, but it's super easy. IRS.gov. But everyone should like open up an account and just look in there because there's useful information that might pertain to you and might be helpful to you at some point. And it's all for free and it all exists there, whether or not you create the account to like log into the portal and see it. But you should, just the same thing with SSA.gov, the Social Security Administration. It's like you can log in and it'll tell you how much money you should be getting in retirement. And it's just useful to know. Like, it's just whenever you think like I've done everything wrong in my life, you can at least log into those things and be like, well, according to this, huge corporation in trench coats government, like I actually am a human being that has served a purpose. And I'm a part of the world.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I encourage that. Like with some free time, IRS.gov, just log in and just see like what you can see about yourself.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Jason, this has been amazing. Just a couple more questions.
Sure.
Regarding finances and things, what advice would you give to somebody who is starting their career right now?
This sounds crazy, but invest and look into a credit card that matches your expenses. Like if you fly, like I have a United card. Yeah, United card is great. I'm also a big fan of United, so I would say United. But any airline that you fly frequently, like I would look into their credit cards and do not use. This is my personal thing. Do not use debit cards on a day-to-day basis. Like use a credit card if you can, because I always say that if you use a debit, that is your money, and if you use a debit card, your money is gone while they investigate or whatever, and it can take months and months and months. At least with a credit card, there are more protections, and you still have money in your checking or whatever your debit account is to still live your life while they do whatever investigations if you have any issues.
I totally agree with that because like I do understand the peace of mind of like a debit card. It's gone. It's gone. If it's not there, it's not there. But we had Travis McHale on here who used a debit card. And even though he didn't have the money in the account, they still let him swipe it. And then he got into trouble that way because it was like there's certain exceptions like gas stations, like anything bought at a gas station counts as a necessity. Therefore, even if you don't have the money, they let you pay for it for X, Y, Z reasons. But then he ended up getting like lots of fines for that, so it cost him more,
right?
But so anyway, so for all the reasons of using a debit card, I get it, but I am with you in that like I like the slow amount of time that you have to like pay it off or resolve something, and they seem to do a better job of investigating it with a credit card. So I too, and to me they're the same thing. It's like you can treat it the same way as the debit card of like I have $1,000, I can't go over that. You can do the same thing with the credit card, like don't go over that $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can also now you can establish parameters that will lock your card or notify you when you're getting close to all these things. And I also, I switched. I was with Southwest originally because I was from Dallas, but I switched to United. And then also, it's the perks of the points. As you work more, you're gonna spend more. You're gonna get more points. And I'm able, that vacation that I went on this past week, I was actually able to use a lot of the points that I had accrued from various projects to pay for a lot of that. So having a good airline or establishing there's a bank that you love, establishing a great relationship with the bank, establishing a great relationship with the airline. I would advise everyone that's starting off to just start that progress because it just happens naturally. But if you started investing and getting those points from these institutions early on, it just builds and builds and builds. So
I love it. I love it. That's the best argument for a credit card I've ever heard because it's not,
weird.
you're not saying it's going to solve all your problems,
right.
But it's just like investing. It's it adds up. Those pennies on the dollars do add up. Okay. Last question for you. Where can people connect with you and who do you want to connect with you?
Anyone can reach out anytime. JasonLynch.design on Instagram. I actually do have direct messaging open. It's funny. I got an email the other day saying, I didn't know if I could contact you on Instagram, but it is open. And even email, which I think you can find on my website, jasondlynch.com. But please reach out. I make it a point to respond to every single email. I know that's a thing. A lot of people just don't have the capacity. But I will respond, I promise. And so my email is a great place. And then Instagram, of course, is always an open invitation for folks to reach out to there.
Okay, Jason, that is awesome. This has been awesome. I'm laughing because you have been dealing with me for the last half hour running and trying to wrangle a toddler.
That's funny.
So thank you very much for putting up with me. And if you're not watching the video, none of this will have mattered. But Jason, thank you so much. This was awesome. I appreciate you giving us the time.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for doing this.
That's it for this week's episode. My takeaways are the Roth IRA. It appears again. So just another reminder, if you don't have one, go set one up. This year, 2025, there's a $7,000 limit, which means that you can put in $7,000, invest it, and in retirement, you are not going to pay taxes on whatever it grows to be. Being current on your taxes and tracking them yourselves. Now, if you don't know how to do your taxes or you want to hear about it, check out episode 183. You can find that at artisticfinance.com/183. We go into the ins and the outs of that. The reality is it's a lot of work to track them yourselves, but you have no choice. As a freelancer, you just have to track your expenses and your income. So you can put it into TurboTax yourself or whatever tax software you use, or you can hand it off. But either way, the majority of the work is keeping track of things. So figure out your system. And Jason is super organized with those quarterly payments, but he has a system and he does it. Paying yourself first. So Jason has had his Roth IRA for roughly 8 years, and this is the first time that he has front-loaded those contributions. So congratulations, Jason, for doing that. And here we are in May. The year is not halfway over. So if you can, go put your money into your retirement account now. And I'm also talking to myself because I was a little late. So actually this year I put contributions for last year. And so I actually need to put contributions in for this year. So Ethan, if you're listening to yourself, go put in your retirement contributions. SPY, the S&P 500 Index Fund, that's just the steady, stable, if you're in the United States, thing to invest your stocks into without you having to do any work. It just means that you are a part of the market. And so if you know nothing else or you don't want to worry about it, a basic thing that you can do is invest in the S&P 500. This is not investing advice, but I would rather you jump in and get involved rather than sit out because you don't know what to invest in. The LLC giving you access to small business loans. This country does love businesses, which is important because they're always going to have tax advantages as small businesses that aren't going to be things you can utilize as an individual. I've never taken a small business loan. I still don't think an LLC is something that I need with my career. However, Jason is a big proponent of it. So it's just something to think about. Circling back about tracking your own taxes and expenses, Jason mentioned that his calendar is a diary. And when he's prepping for his taxes, he's referencing that calendar. I do the exact same thing. And that's just a reminder to maybe be detailed about your calendar or know that every single one of us is sort of using our calendar as a diary to answer these questions as we're putting our taxes together. That's just something I can very much relate to, especially with vehicle expenses. And you're trying to figure out, or per diem, when you're trying to figure out, like, how many days was I there? Which were the travel days? Every year, I'm always going back to the calendar to confirm those numbers and those dates. A big theater city that isn't New York. Jason talked about a good work-life balance in Chicago. It was encouraging to anybody who's not wanting to move to New York, but wanting to move to a city with theater work to check out Chicago. I'm so glad Jason brought this up because I've actually discovered that there is a bias in this very podcast, and that is I tend to interview people from New York and from Broadway. And partially that's because I lived there for a while, and partially that's because I sort of view Broadway as like the big commercial theater in the United States, and that stuff is true. But the reality is that's only a small microcosm of the theater of the nation and theater of the world. So thank you for Jason for getting us out of New York for a bit. Keeping it human. So there is a lot of stress. There's hierarchical friction within theater productions. And it's weird because we're all on the overall team, and that team is creating a live event for people to attend. So there doesn't need to be rudeness or short tempers or disappointment when hopes and expectations aren't met. Now, I've assisted on 2 Broadway shows, and in both of those, there was friction between the lighting designer and the production electrician. And I don't understand why. They're both on the same team, and yet somehow they didn't quite get along. And as the assistant, I sort of like bridged the gap, which I'm not really good at doing. But I like Jason's idea of just keeping it human. Why are we not all chill? Like, I know we can all be chill, but why is it when we get into work in theater that we get unchill and we get stressed? No. The show's going to happen. We all know what we're doing. It's going to happen. Anyway, keeping it human. I love that reminder. And that ties into problem solvers. Yes, we should all be that. It's the same idea of leading with yes instead of leading with no. Now, as a designer, and theater specifically, where human resources are often stretched thin, it's easy to label a lot of people as problem finders. For example, every time I send off a light plot, inevitably the production electrician gets back to me with issues. Now, the good ones offer solutions, but the bad ones let me come up with the solutions. And so I much rather would have good people finding solutions or solving the problems with me and for me than have to do it in a silo, do it myself. There's nothing worse than getting a response that says, we can't do it. And then I have to figure out how do we do the idea without the resources. I much prefer, we can't do that, but we can maybe do this or we can maybe do that. And then we have options. It's easy for everyone. So anyway, if you're listening, just, be a problem solver. Estate sales. I love that Jason said that. Furniture especially is so expensive. So we have almost been on our house for a year now, and we do not have furniture. Like, my brother gave me a couch. I mentioned I got a table and chairs for the kitchen from Facebook Marketplace. But furniture, if you just order it, is super expensive. So estate sales are wonderful. The catch is that you have to transport it yourself. But if you can figure that out, then there are deals to be had. A lonely career. So Jason said it. It's not just me that is saying that this career is lonely. This is something that people don't like talking about. But he mentioned having that shared document with his agent so that he at least has somebody else to help him make career decisions and he's not just doing it solo. Now, if there's anybody listening who is in school, you now have a heads up about the loneliness that is coming your way. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a result of working on very specific things that only you can do. Like, you're the only one that can make those light cues, or you're the only one that can prep the show file to make those light cues, stuff like that. And it's unexpected loneliness because the projects are so collaborative. And loneliness isn't specific to theater. It's a global phenomenon. But Jason mentioned missing academia because everybody was around each other all the time. And then when you graduate, you switch to these various different projects with different teams, and you don't have that common through line or that camaraderie. I'd never really thought about that, but boy, Jason is right about that. So just a reminder to stick with your people, regardless of if they stay in the industry or not. You need to have a group, and hopefully it just works out naturally. But thank you, Jason, for bringing that up, because it is lonely, but it is lonely. And that's actually a reason why I like this podcast, because yes, I'm right now standing in my garage talking to myself alone, but I get to talk with people like Jason, and I get to talk to listeners who reach out. And we all sort of understand what's going on. We get to talk to each other. And so I'm weirdly more social because of the podcast about theater than I am when I'm working in theater. It's sort of a weird thing. Anyway, just happy that Jason brought it up. IRS.gov. Now remember your homework. Go sign in, create your account, and just check it out for half an hour and see if there's any helpful information in there. If not helpful, it'll at least be eye-opening to know the IRS, yes, indeed, is tracking every little thing about you. And my final takeaway is don't use debit cards. Now, this is the first time anybody has said this, and I totally agree. There's not a way to fix the mistake or contest it. You also don't get points, which I am an anti-point person on principle, but just like I'm anti-capitalism sort of type thing. But the system is rigged for points, and so you might as well take advantage of them, because you're going to spend the same amount of money regardless of whether you're using credit or debit. So, Jason, that's an excellent, excellent point. All right, now, did you think that Jason could be a stand-up comedian? I'm standing by that. I think he could do it. I got to say, I haven't laughed that much during an episode, and I don't even know how long. Maybe. So whatever Jason brought to this table, there was a lot of humor and fun in it. Now, a reminder as we wrap up this episode that I do have that favor to ask, and that is for you to go subscribe or follow on your podcast app, follow Artistic Finance. If you can do it on YouTube, that would also be super cool. So that way we get closer to our 1,000 subscribers, in which point then we could run ads on our videos, which I don't know how that works, but maybe I would get a penny per episode. I don't know. And then if you are following or subscribing on your podcast app, if you could enable auto downloads, so that way, even if you don't listen in the first week or ever, actually, that will still get a download number, that would be super helpful. And then if you're not for those shenanigans of enabling the auto download, you can certainly still help out, probably even more helpfully, by becoming a Patreon patron. Because again, the patrons are the ones that make this show happen, that keep it going. I am very grateful. If you are a patron and you are listening, I truly, from the bottom of my heart, am very grateful. Like, I don't know how to say it or express it, but you are the only income source I have for this show, and you help pay our bills every month. And so thank you for that. And so if you're listening, you're not a patron, but you support the show and you want to give back, or you want to thank me, or however you want to justify it in your brain, that would make you happy about doing it. Please do so. And you can do so at patreon.com/artisticfinance. And just in case I didn't enunciate that enough, patreon.com/artisticfinance. And the dad joke to end the episode is to remember that they call them seat cushions because stool softeners didn't sound quite right. That's it for today. Until next time, break a leg.
Thank you for listening to Artistic Finance, where we interview successful artists, leaders, and investors to help educate and inspire the creative community. To access our show notes and resources, go to artisticfinance.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any decision, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Artistic Finance. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.